Sometimes it's just not possible to photograph the scene at the angle that you want. Or sometimes you might just be off by a little bit when you take the photo and you want to correct the perspective. In order to fix this, we can use the Manual tab in the Lens Correction panel. So let's select all three of these images here. I'll just hold down the Command key or the Control key on Windows to select them all, and then I'll click on the Open in Camera Raw icon. You can see that because I had three images selected, thumbnails for those images appear over here on the left. I want to go ahead and select all of my images to start with, so I'll click Select All, and then we'll move over to the Lens Correction panel, and I'll actually start with the Profile panel. The reason that I selected all of the images is because you'll get better results with the perspective correction if you've enabled the Lens Profile Correction here, and if you move to the Color panel and choose to remove Chromatic Aberration. Now we'll move over to the Manual panel, but before I start making adjustments, now's the time when I only want the first image selected. So I'll click on the first image, and then let's take a look at the different options under Upright. The first option does an auto correction. You can see that the perspective has been straightened on the building, and it looks much better. Now, optically, it's not exactly straight, but it's a more natural correction to the image. We'll notice the difference as we move through the other options. The next option here only corrects the level, so it's only trying to straighten the horizon of the image. It doesn't actually do any vertical or horizontal corrections. Then the next option will do just vertical corrections. So now you can see that these vertical lines are straight. In fact, if I show the grid on top of it, we can go ahead and compare them to that grid. So optically, they are correct here, but it's up to you if you prefer this vertical option versus the auto perspective correction. If you need them exactly straight, go ahead and select that fourth option in order to straighten those vertical lines. The last option here straightens not only the vertical lines, but also the horizontal lines. Again, we can show the grid here, and now you can see, for example, that these horizontal lines are all straighter than they were with just the previous option checked on. So again, it's a matter of preference. Whichever one of these options you prefer is the one that you should go with. Let's go ahead and move to the next image here, and let's look at the different results that we get. Here's the option with auto, and it looks like it's straightening it and doing a really nice job. Of course, if we go to level, it would only level it, so we're not going to get the perspective correction. The third one gives me only the vertical perspective, and I wanted to use this file as an example just because it's so obvious that it hasn't straightened the horizontal lines. It's only straightening the vertical lines. Finally, the full correction, the last icon there, is going to straighten both the vertical and the horizontals. And we can just look at the difference here between the auto and the vertical. So it's very similar. It's only a little bit different. Again, it's a personal preference. Finally, when we move down to the Ivory building and we walk through the options, here is the auto option. So it's leveled it and it's also starting to straighten it. Level, of course, would only level. The third option here is going to really straighten those verticals. You can always check that by showing the grid. And finally, this last option, the full option, is going to almost make it appear that we're moving around or the house is moving so that we've got a straight-on view of it. And of course, you can use any of these presets and then also go down here in the transform area and modify them. So let's go ahead and add just a slight rotation here. And I just want to point out that if you use any of the manual overrides here, if you do go back and click one of the upright icons, it will actually reset any of the manual settings that you've made here. I also want to show you that if the distortion on your image is really great, you will also see this transparent checkerboard here that just tells you that to make that kind of distortion, you don't have enough information in your original image. So in order to distort that, you're going to need to do one of two things. You'll either need to crop the file, or you'll need to make up this information, maybe by taking this photograph into Photoshop and using maybe one of the content-aware fill tools or the clone tool. Regardless of how you do it, you would need to make up that information. There is an option with the crop tool. You can see that it's set to constrain to image, which means that even if I drag out a crop into the transparent area, when I release the mouse, it will constrain it so that it's not cropping into any of the transparent areas. It's constraining it to the image area. Of course, we can always reposition and resize that crop if we wanted to include a different area of our image. All right, let's double click where it says vertical to turn that off. I just wanted to make you aware of that because I obviously forced it to do it using the manual overrides down here, but sometimes when you click on one of the upright options, it will actually show you that checkerboard as well. This time when we click done, you'll notice that all 3 of the icons here in Bridge were updated. So as you can see, it's very easy to now correct perspective in Camera Raw. One helpful tip to keep in mind, you might want to think about shooting the scene a bit wider than necessary if you know that you're going to change the perspective because you might need to crop the image and you want to make sure that you have enough information to start with so that when you crop, you're not cropping off any important elements.